Is that going to bother you in the back there?
Nope.
Okay, great. Our deal with the wind from Blue Creek, so I'm very interested to hear what you have to say.
How do we start the slideshow?
I beg your pardon?
How do we start?
Go over to, yeah. There you go.
There we go. Well, since it's such a small group, and I know two of you, can you guys introduce yourself to me, ladies and guy?
I'm Destiny,
Okay. What are you studying here?
Environmental Sciences.
Excellent.
I'm Matt. I'm studying engineering physics.
What do you want to do?
My specialization is in nuclear.
Oh.
What do you need to do?
I want to work with developing communities and other around the world to build them up in a sustainable way.
Building communities, or you want to work with communities that are developing?
Developing communities.
Cool. I'm a big nuclear plant fan. I'm actually a wind naysayer.
Huh.
Which I guess is why the university asked me to negotiate a wind contract.
Oh, I don't think we have that.
That's all right. For those of you who don't know, let me give you a real quick rundown of why I'm here. The university has a mantra, a motto of one university. That was actually started when President Gee was here the first time around. When he came back the second time, a little more experience, a little more sort of knowledge under his belt, and he has really driven that lately. So as a system, we are so huge that over the last 150 years, we sort of developed a process of operating like a bunch of autonomous systems, departments, colleges, units, athletics, research, academics, and President Gee really sort of led the approach to say, look, we are either one or we are not. And so now we are one university. What we've added is one sustainable university, and that's because the university defines sustainability. First goal of sustainability is to be here tomorrow. It's not to be green, not to be cost effective, it's to survive. It's to be here tomorrow to say we were sustainable. So that's the first goal. If you think about it, that's the goal for corporate, environmental, for anything. The first goal of sustainability is to be here tomorrow. So sustainability might mean adaptability, it might mean resilience, the ability to deal with change rather than avoid change, or it might mean change. The second goal of sustainability is everything else. Is it economically sustainable? Is it environmentally sustainable? Is it educationally sustainable? Is it morally sustainable? You name it. But the first goal is you got to be here tomorrow in order to do any of those other things. So the university created the Office of Energy and the Environment. Why? Well, energy is sort of the one thing the university treats thematically across all functions. So we developed an office that deals with how we buy it, use it, save it, teach it, research it, and outreach it. So anything that deals with energy, smells like, looks like, tastes like, or sounds like energy, comes through one office at some point. So we have a sustainable one university approach. So we all know what's going on. We no longer spend $1 on energy that doesn't touch research or academics. We no longer spend $1 in energy research that doesn't touch operations. So it's sustainable. So let me give you a snapshot of electricity at Ohio State. Now, I'm only going to get a couple slides into this when I will expect questions. University, has anybody heard of the discovery themes? Just one of you? We haven't done a very good job. The university has picked 3 discovery themes. Every 5 or 10 years, the university picks themes of focus, academics and research in particular. And the university's picked 3: food production and security, health and wellness, and energy and the environment. Why is energy and the environment red? Well, because it's mine. No, because it's the one that the other 2 rely on. Health and wellness, the biggest focus on health and wellness right now is on the energy impacts and aspects of public health. People without access to low-cost energy are markedly less healthy. Health systems, health treatments, huge energy users, massive energy users. Example, this university is 105 megawatts of power. The hospital is 20 of that. So it's a significant amount of energy. Strategic planning. In context with the Office of Energy and the Environment, we've set up, let's do some very strategic planning long-term. Outdate all of us. The University Sustainability Plan, the Climate Action Plan, and these are in order of age or length of term. 100 years, 50 years, current. So we have a sustainability plan that looks forward 100 years. You've heard of the framework plan, looks at roads, infrastructure, rivers, creeks, buildings. It says, well, no more academic space. We actually have a policy at this university to build no new academic space, no net new. So we won't put up one more classroom unless we take one down. Why? Because we did a systems approach and realized we have really poor utilization of academic space. On any given moment, walk down a hall of any building, see how many classrooms have people in them. Very few. Climate Action Plan says by 2050 we'll be climate neutral. What does climate neutral mean? We have no idea. None. The American College and Universities present climate action commitment is a group of about 800 universities and colleges got together and signed a commitment to be climate neutral by 2050. Only they didn't define climate neutrality. Ohio State said climate neutral is by definition an impossibility. You can't get there unless you stop breathing. By definition, carbon expelling entities have an impact on the climate, whatever that is. So we adapted it to be carbon neutral. So we have a plan to be carbon neutral by 2050. Huge task. Some say currently, and with current knowledge and current awareness of technologies, still impossible.
So you're carbon neutral, what is that?
Carbon neutral means that for every unit of CO2 that we cause to be emitted into the environment, we remove one.
And how are you removing one?
Great question. It's coming up. Green building and energy policies is the first way. We developed a green build and energy policy to make all buildings LEED silver. We can argue whether that's good or bad, but all buildings are more energy efficient now by requirement. We use thermal glass. We deal with the envelopes differently. We use high efficiency heating and cooling systems. We use white roofs when possible. We use central chillers and central heat when possible, all to bring us to more energy efficiency, which means less carbon. Now, most universities, when they signed up for this plan, had power plants on their campus, like we used to. The McCracken power plant, you see the steam coming out of there, that used to be a coal-burning power plant. Well, we shut it down in the 90s because of its environmental issues. So in one day, we took a 70% reduction in our climate impact. So our goal is much more difficult to attain. Most universities are in plans to shut down their coal plants, and they'll see those impacts. So we did that prior to a commitment, but we like to lead. I already mentioned that. Before we get to the wind and the geothermal, take a quick look at the place where you go to school. It is a city. We have a population of about 107,000 day in and day out. We have about 70,000 vehicles that drive through the Woody Hayes Cannon Drive intersection every day. Okay, there is not an intersection in Westerville, Akron, Centerville, Mansfield, any city of that size that passes 70,000 vehicles in a single intersection. And that's only a 4-lane intersection. You ask why we don't have giant traffic jams there? Extreme systems engineering. The lights at that intersection are tied to the lights that are 6 miles away. So cars coming off of lane, they're restricted so that you don't get a big slug of vehicles all in one place. We have 450 buildings, every type and every function, every age. We have labs, we have hospitals, we have residents, we have office, we have mixed use, we have old, we have buildings that are more than 100 years old, we have buildings that are less than 3. We are 100 megawatts of demand. That's the size of Westerville. That's 25,000 homes around the clock. On a really hot day, we use enough energy for 35,000 homes. So we are a huge impact on the energy profile of this region. We spend 40 million, a little less now after the wind deal, 40 million in electricity, 60 million for a combination of electric, gas, and water. At those kind of dollars, we have to be extremely sensitive to everything we do. So what's my job? Mostly campus operations. I'm also by appointment a energy researcher in the College of Engineering, where my focus is energy efficiency. But in the office, I'm about operations. How do we make sure that our dollars are as sustainably addressed as possible? How do we make sure it solves our serves our 3 missions and our goals of campus climate neutrality? We do that with a systematic approach. We have not had a systematic approach until recently. So right now we're enjoying some of the low-hanging fruit of being systematic in your thinking. 5 years ago, we had a lighting retrofit standard. If it was a T12, which these have been switched out, you switched them out to T8s. But that wasn't tied to anything. Was it tied to an analysis of how long this room will last? Or is this room going to be a classroom? Or the lenses. These are called egg crates. One of the most inefficient uses of fluorescent lighting you can have. You would actually do better to remove that and just leave bare bulbs. Or, believe it or not, to put a completely frosted lens over the whole thing. So, we don't do that anymore. We will not come in, if these were T12, we would not come in here and change them out without first saying, what's the lifetime of this room? What's the lifetime of this building? We wouldn't do it without changing the lenses. And what's the impact on the heating and cooling? Wait a minute, fluorescents, they don't have an impact. Well, yeah, they do, actually. Nationwide, one nationwide downtown, giant office tower, did a full change out from T12s to T8s. Going to save a lot of electric. Only it caused a 3-degree drop in ambient temperature. And ate all of their savings in increased heating. So the comfort level, you think 68, 72, most offices on this campus and anywhere, at 2 degrees change in temperature, the occupant will be uncomfortable, either hot or cold. So it's really narrow. We have a systematic energy conservation program. What are the 5 worst performing buildings on this campus? Would you be surprised if I told you the 5 worst energy hogs on this campus? 4 of them are the 4 newest buildings.
Yes, would be surprised.
Scott Lab,
No.
brand new, beautiful building. Mechanical engineering, ought to be efficient, right? Worst performing electric building on campus. Spend $35 million a year for electric, $3 million goes to Scott Lab. 450 buildings and nearly 10% to one building. Because we weren't systematic in our approach. Building was designed for mechanical engineers, large labs, large mechanical spaces, beautiful building, lots of glass. Come by us Sunday morning at 2 a.m., look at that building glow. There are lights in that building that can't be shut off.
No.
Because when the architects and engineers were designing it, that wasn't an issue for them. You know, OSHA requirements, you know, there's got to be some minimum level of lighting 24/7. Well, on the big crossways between the two sections of Scott Lab, beautiful lights, and just put one switch in. So they're either on or they're off. For health and safety, they've got to be on. So they're all on. The building is positively pressured 24/7, 365. The whole building. Not the labs. The whole building. The hallways, the meeting space, the classrooms, and the labs.
Why?
Because in the east half, in the west half, there are hazmat laboratories in there that deal with materials which can become airborne. So they're positively pressured to keep any hazmat issue contained within the lab. Why do the whole building? Well, because it was easier to design. No other reason. And nobody stopped to say, wait a minute, what's that going to do to us? If you've been in the quad in that area, you ever tried to hear yourself think? Beautiful green grass, all this glass, you cannot hear, ever. Because 24/7, 365, there's 500 horsepower of blowers sucking in outside air. The building is pressurized with 100% outside air. So when you want it 72 degrees inside and it's 18 degrees outside and you're sucking in air, huge loss of efficiencies. Physics research building. Beautiful atrium. Walk in there someday and just look at the lights in the atrium. Say, boy, those are cool. These big reflective discs. Boy, those are cool. We built, and it's beautiful. We built a system with high intensity discharge lights to hit a reflective disc to come down onto the floor at a level of lighting that you would be comfortable with, because HID lights are hot and bright, and they call it hot spots in your eyes. So they're too bright to shine directly down. But they look cool. So we shine them onto discs to bounce the light down. So we have about 400% excess wattage in the atrium. And those lights are on a time clock, not on a light sensor. So the atrium is also full of glass. August, sun is out. You can turn all of those off and be above all standards for necessary lighting. But the lights are still on. Because there was no need to think systematically. We don't do that anymore. Leveraged investments, or campus-wide projects. So these 5 buildings was our test model. Right now we have a program underway to change those 5 buildings. Not to make them super efficient, you can't do that, but to make them more efficient.
Can you tell us what the other 3 buildings are? So they just got
Yeah, physics research, Scott Lab, BRT, Biomedical Research Tower, RPAC,
Surprise there.
and what am I missing?
Is it union?
Pardon me?
Is it union?
No. Physics, RPAC, Biomedical, Scott. Oh, Math Annex, right behind Scott.
Huh.
That was that'll largely be envelope issues. You've seen all the enormous amount of sawing and cutting that was going on the bricks outside.
Yeah.
That was a design flaw. That the only way to deal with the envelope was to get behind the brick. So those projects are underway. the first building will be the biomedical research tower. So, huge project for us. First time university's ever done anything like that. That's $15 million. We won't, that's $15 million will take 7 years to pay back after it's all done.
Is that for all 5 or just for the first
That's
one?
5 buildings.
Okay.
To do an audit of one of these buildings, just to go in and decide what needs to be done, roughly 40 grand. Our office took a message to the leadership at Bricker Hall and the Board of Trustees and said, this is great, but if we take this as our model, do 5 more, do 5 more, by the time we get to building 50, these 5 will be out of date again. That we will never catch up. That we have to sort of face the reality that we've spent 150 years not being systematic and bite the bullet. And they said yes. So we have the largest RFQ ever issued at Ohio State for an operational thing, not to build a building. But we issued an RFQ, a request for qualifications, to update every building on campus all at once. All 450 buildings. All of the infrastructure between those buildings. So we're seeking a company, or companies as it will probably be, to come in, audit everything. And then begin, because there's not been enough of this on campus, a all-out construction renovation project. That will, audits alone will probably take 2 years, construction renovation on all the buildings, probably another 5 to 7.
You said instruction renovation? Did you say?
Construction and renovation.
Construction, that makes
Yeah.
more sense.
And this is athletics, academics, labs, dorms, steam tunnels, electric lines, power plant, it's everything. Our estimate's probably $250 million.
I heard that the approach they're trying to take is that the structure with the businesses would be if they get like a large percentage of the savings that would be happening, like Ohio State put the $250 million down, and then like the way they would be getting their money would be how much money OSU actually is saving. Is that?
Yeah,
And that many
similar.
companies are fighting on
That's
that?
certainly how this one is. The 5 building projects is what's called a standard energy service contract agreement, where it's guaranteed savings. The company that's doing those 5 buildings has promised us they could make the buildings this much more efficient. If they don't hit that achievement, they don't get paid. This one, it's $250 million. It's a little, there aren't too many companies who have that. And what Ohio State has said is we're going to put up no money this time. We want the company to come in and propose how to do this. So some of the companies are proposing they'll fund it all and we'll share the savings. Others suggest they'll fund it all, and if they hit a goal, we'll have an agreed upon payment regardless of the savings. Personally, I like that method better. It's a little cleaner. You don't argue then about the verification. Because when it's paid out of the savings, naturally, there's a difference of motivation, if you will. They want to say there's giant savings. I'm going to want to say there aren't savings. But if you have just a fixed fee, you might avoid that argument, but who knows? We'll probably be at least close to the end of the year before we get that awarded and negotiated. And there's never been anything like that in the world. The companies that responded all said, by the way, you do understand this has never been done before, which just encourages us a little bit more. I mean, that's, so big, giant, very small. Why did I put this last? Because this is truly sustainability, is understanding how to leverage your investments. And this is what led to wind. Leverage investments. If I can spend 10 grand on a project to make it X more efficient, what good do can I get more out of that than just saying, let's make this building more efficient? So as a part of a systematic approach to sustainability, The university now sets aside $1 million every year, cash. And our office takes that pot of money and we look at the whole university and say, what's going on? Where could a push change the dynamics of a project or a program? A good example, we're building the CBEC building, Chemical, Biological Engineering and Chemistry. Sustainable and systems approach for a couple reasons. First time 2 colleges have ever built a building together. Classroom and laboratories mixed. Offices separated from classrooms and laboratories. Why? Because we've learned offices use energy differently. We don't want another Scott Lab. We don't want to pressurize offices. It's not necessary. We're a state entity, so you have to fall in within regular capital budgets. Advanced metering is not a capital improvement, or is not approved for capital, state capital. There's standards. You put in advanced meter, you put in regular meters, good to go.
Just a quick question on the new chemistry building.
Yeah.
Have you been involved with that one?
Yes.
Are
Which,
they-
the CBEC building, the one that's going up right now?
Yeah.
Yes, daily.
Because that one has a large amount of windows as well.
It does. Huge amount of
Significantly
windows.
large amount.
You know, as just an energy efficiency guy, windows sometimes bother me. But as long as I know the window was designed systematically, with an understanding of what will that window do to the heating and cooling load, what will that window do to the lighting load, then I'm okay. Because windows lower lighting load. Lighting is 20% or more of a typical building's load. So as long as I know that the loss in lighting load won't be eaten up by the increase in the heating load, I'm okay. And everybody worries about windows, but the largest heat loss in a building is not windows, it's walls.
Really?
Just surface area. So we looked at that building and we said, well, what if we put advanced metering? I mean, advanced. Meters per room, per function. We said, well, it'd be about $150,000. Pretty small, actually, in the grand scheme of things. To put advanced meters in this building, about $4 million, because it's built. 150. When that building goes up, if you want to tell me what's it cost, electric-wise, water-wise, steam-wise, to run a lab, we can tell you. What about an office? We can tell you. What about a classroom? We can tell you. What about functionality? What is the lighting cost, the heating cost, the water cost? So meters at both the function and the room level. Our calculation is that'll pay back in about 14 months.
The 150K.
150K.
See this for actually individual rooms or like sections of the building?
Both. We did a couple floors are done differently so we can learn something. Do you need to monitor every lab? We don't know. So some labs will be individually metered and some labs, quads, will be metered. So over time we're going to say, look, that whole wing is labs. It operates just like every one of those individual labs. We get more cold calls or hot calls or we don't. So part of it is experiment. But we also paid for conduit. Just in case it's really lopsided one way or the other. If we determine that every room is good, it's this pulling line. It's not retrofitting, the pipe is there. And that's part of our new building standards. Build modular, build for plug and play, build for renovation, and build for changes in technology. So in the last 3 years, $3 million invested. It's one-time money each year. We are on the order of about $1.2 million in annual savings from that $3 million. So collectively, over 3 years, we're at a year and a half, 2-year payback. Some of those projects pay back almost, spend $5,000, and it almost pays back in the next electric bill. We had a variable speed drive on a chiller that was out of warranty, and the capital approval process doesn't let you put a new motor on a system that's out of warranty. It was $8,000 though. And it was, we just knew if that thing lasts a year, we're good. So we put it in, the bill the next month covered the cost of that meter, that variable speed. So in 1 month it broke even, and every month after that it's just going to be gravy. If the thing lasts another year, or 10 years, I don't care. And that's small investments for leveraged benefit. Efficiency through scale. This university has a very centralized approach now. How many have seen the new chiller building? Know that it's a chiller building.
The really cool looking one by the hospital.
Oh, bless you.
That is so cool looking. I love that building.
Sometimes I think I'm the only person who loves this building,
It is so beautiful.
especially when the sun's out.
Yeah.
That chiller, that's a chiller plant. There are 12 250,000 ton chillers in there.
Wow.
How many people are in that building? It's not an office, there's not a chair, nothing in there. It's completely automated. Its purpose is to chill the medical complex. Prior to that, each building in the medical complex had its own chiller plant. Largest known single chiller plant in the country. Where do you hide a chiller plant? You don't. For efficiency reasons, the closest place to put it was at the water main. For sustainability reasons, the least environmental impact was where we have to cut the least amount of road and there's the least amount of green space. So we connect to the water main on the other side of Cannon Drive, lost no green space, minimal impact construction-wise, but there's an environmental cost. The chiller plant sucks 2,000 gallons a minute of water out of the municipal water supply. 2,000 gallons. Water is going up significantly. 1,000 is evaporated through the chiller process. Another 1,000 we dump in the ground. We dump. 4 million gallons flowing through this system, and every minute we throw out 1,000 and add a new 1,000 in. Why? Because the system's approach demonstrated to us we can soften the water because you can't put hard water into chiller systems. You can soften it like most facilities do. We can buy 60 tons of salt every year. Special storage facility, environmental issue. For the hospital, you have to, then you can't use this for domestic cold water without extracting salt. Or we can just add makeup water. We can dump 1,000 every minute because as the process goes through repeated evaporation, the minerals concentrate. So we can just dump 1,000, add 1,000, and keep it at balance. So my water bill went up 40%. My electric bill is going to go down about 80% for chilling. So once we did the systems approach, no brainer. Yes, good deal. Happy to do it. Water could go up 300%. Still safe. So a good deal for, and a cool building. We're building another one up on High Street. It's a smaller one, but same kind of concept.
Will it look as cool?
Good question. It was actually going to look similar to similar design. You looked at it and said, "Boy, that building looks cool." I mean, the thought was to make that building resemble ice in a way. You know, the chiller plant, the big one. And you look at it; it's white. It's, you know, it's got these long columns of glass drips, if you will. But there's some debate now for the one on High Street whether it should be traditional Georgian brick storefront look or not. So,
Do we get to vote?
the trustees, I'm sure, will get the vote.
And about that big giant chiller plant, you said there were 250 what?
1,000-ton chillers.
1,000 tons.
At the moment, we're running 2 of them because we're sort of phasing them in over time. 6 of them alone go for the new hospital tower, and that doesn't come online for quite some time. Actually, we're supposed to be running 2. I take that back. They were a little more efficient than we expected. We over-engineered a bit, so we'll probably need to build another building before we actually got to 12. They're in there, but now our estimate is when they're full online, we'll only be running 10. So they're a little more efficient than we thought, which is good. On the long term, short term is bad. It means they're running at not optimal. So we've got 2 running, but they're both running at half because of the way the system was designed. So it's live and learn. Geothermal. We'll give you a little bit of detail on that. Another giant centralized heating and cooling. When you are this tight, when you are in a city environment, centralized makes sense. Almost always on heating and cooling. You can always chill or heat water in mass and transport it with less loss than you can cost effectively in single units. We buy at the market. Believe it or not, we have somebody whose full-time job is to play the market for natural gas. We burn a lot of natural gas for steam, for hot water, for gas purposes. 18 months out from any given point in time, we've purchased 50% of the gas we'll need for 18 months later. 6 months out, we've purchased maybe 75%. 3 weeks out, there's still 20% we haven't purchased. And that's because from a systematics approach, we realized buying long-term gas was hurting us. We weren't achieving the efficiencies of the market. Gas, while very low, is also volatile. Changes very rapidly. When you're this big, you have the capacity to forecast a bit ahead and to shift low. So we have somebody now who plays the market on gas. Last year, it saved us about $11 million in gas costs. Our total gas cost is only about 14. So gas last year was almost free for a system. I mean, that's a systematic approach. And what happens if we haven't bought and the price skyrockets? Could happen. We have developed a utility reserve fund. In the money we saved here and in the money we save on energy conservation, a certain percentage has gone into a utility reserve fund that stays level. When it gets above that number, it just rolls back into the general fund. So in the event there's a spike, we're ready to go. No need to panic, no need to go get special money. It's just there. And wind power. Let's talk a bit about geothermal. 508 wells. They're 550 to 600 feet. Actually, a couple of them are 800 feet. What's your class rank? Seniors? Everybody? Junior? Senior, everybody?
I'm a junior.
All right, well, the project's been underway since you've been here.
Yep. I got to play out in the South Oval my first quarter,
Yeah.
and that's been
It's a bit behind schedule. It was supposed to be completely done and restored online last fall and restored this spring. We ran into a contracting issue, had to sort of stop mid-road, get a new contractor, repair all the wells, but it's back on track. Everybody know what geothermal is? It's just using the ground as a heat sink and a heat source. It's running cold or hot water, depending on the season, into the ground and extracting the heat or dumping the heat and running the return through your chiller or heating system. There's been a lot of numbers, and if you read the articles, it's important that often I'll see articles where say it's going to cover a third of the university's power. No. It's going to cover up to a third of the South District's heating and cooling needs. No power. This is just heating and cooling. Original cost, payback calculations were 7 years. Because of the contracting issues we ran into, that's probably bumped up to closer to 12 now. But you're talking about equipment that is almost failure-proof. You're talking about pipes and pumps. So it's nothing to calculate that this will still be operating with minor maintenance 30 years from now. So even when we stopped, when the contract issue came up, and we did consider, in a systems approach, you consider, is it time to cut your losses and stop? We looked at it and said, no, 12 years is still a really good payback. There'll be no loss of land. When it's done, the south oval will look just like the south oval. There'll be no wellheads exposed. It'll be lawn again. We did lose a parking lot, but the parking lot is now a green space. We could have put the parking lot back, but traffic and parking thought it was a problem lot behind Hale Hall. It's hard to get into. Now it's just a new quad. No visibility. When it's all done, you drive by it, you not know. You go into the basement of what's the one just west of Steve? The building just west of Steve is where all the mechanicals are in the basement. We lost a little bit of space today. Some giant equipment down there. But 50 of the wells are operational already. And the rest, we fully expect in autumn the whole system to be online. It'll probably be spring 2014 before we get to restore the oval. Just because you can't really grow much grass until fall. So, looking forward to it. If you have technical questions or you ever want to see it, we can arrange that. Not a whole lot to see. The chiller plant's cooler. But we could
Can we
do.
arrange to see that?
Pardon me?
Can we arrange to see that?
Sure. We could do this because we have the property. We don't have the property everywhere to do this. I mean, this is, there's 500 wells. This takes a lot of acreage. Wells have to be far enough apart to not rob heat from one another. So there's not a whole lot of other spaces on campus where we could do this. We can't actually do it on the main oval because of the infrastructure that's underground. Despite all the grass on the top, most of the main oval is filled with underground tunnels. So there's no place to put the wells. You could do some of it out on West Campus, but there's a river underground on West Campus.
How far apart do the wells need to be?
It depends on the geology a little bit, but on average, you need 20 feet in all directions. Now, it depends on what you're running into. That's part of the problem we ran into. Largely because we didn't listen to our own experts. We had geology faculty who were telling us that we were going to run into fractured limestone. The contractor said, no, it won't be. It'll be solid. It'll have its own integrity. So you're just going to drill through this rock, and the rock was going to be its own pipe. Well, if you were here for the geysers, we drilled through, it was fractured. The way they drill these wells, once they drill them, then they have to flush them with water. And as they were pumping water down in one hole, it was geysering out another, which said, okay, this system clearly won't work. All the wells are now communicating. You might as well have just drilled one. So the new contractor came in and sleeved, cased all of the wells. A couple of them they had to close because they were too close together in the geology that was there.
There it is right here.
Because the whole point is you can't have any communication between these wells, or they lose their purpose. But on general, 20 feet, more if you can get it, in this kind of topology. I mean, we're very close to a river, which adds benefit. The closer you are to a body of water, the more geothermal impact you're probably going to get. Now, there is another system out there that we're probably going to try at the vet hospital called aquifer thermal storage, which uses the same technology, but we do that whole system on the south oval with maybe 6 wells. And you do want the wells to communicate in that case. You just drill them on the perimeter and you create an underground pressure curtain. So pumps, computer-operated pumps, just circulate water in a circle. And you inject the heat or extract the heat from a well in the middle. So all summer you inject heat, or all winter you inject cold, and all summer you extract it. Very new technology, but we're going to try that over on West Campus.
So I might have misheard. Did you say that those 6 wells would do as much conservation as the 508?
Yeah, we're looking at the West Camp, the vet hospital project. If that goes forward, 4 wells will be 500 tons of chilling. So 4 wells would chill the entire vet complex, and it's not. The power uses are going to be pretty much the same, because in the one we did on the South Campus, those wells inject on off as you need. The one we'll do on West Campus or on the vet campus, those wells are going to have to run 24/7, 365, because if they shut off, you lose all your stored heat as the aquifer moves downriver, so to speak. And there's a lot of aquifer under this campus, and it moves rather rapidly. So if you extract and insert heat or cool today and you don't contain it, the only thing you've done is chilled the river as it flows down the road. So, but wind power. We began taking wind energy December 1st. Currently we are way over forecast. December was an incredibly windy month, which it's not typically. So things are going really positively for wind. 50 megawatts of capacity. Have you talked about capacity versus energy? All right, so on a perfect day, there were 3 days in December where we actually got 50 megawatts.
Wow.
Our forecast was there would be no days in the 20-year life of this agreement where we'd get 50. So it's called the Blue Creek Wind Farm. The company behind it is Iberdrola Renewables. It's a Spanish company, the 2 largest wind producers in Ohio, and our foreign companies, Iberdrola and Horizon, which is a Portuguese company. Blue Creek is the 2nd largest wind farm in the country. Surprises most people. Ohio is not known as a wind resource state. It's the 2nd largest in the country. It's really big. 300 megawatt farm is really big for a wind farm. A typical wind farm, 50, maybe 100. 1,800 acres. It covers much of 2 counties. The central operations facilities in Van Wert, and it covers, by forecast, to 20 to 25% of our load. In December, it was more like 35% of our load. We take wind first through our meter, so if the wind's blowing, that's the energy we're using. And we use brown power to fill. The rest of the load comes through the standard system. 50 megawatts by forecast should be about 150,000 megawatt hours a year. What is this deal? It's a 20-year deal. The university has never entered into a power purchase agreement before. That we were willing to do a 20-year deal says a lot about our leadership, a real change in approach, a real understanding of the commodity value of energy and the importance of it. We buy the energy, and this is the most important. We buy the RECs. Have you talked about RECs? Okay, University of Pennsylvania for 3 years has claimed to be 100% green. If you go to the EPA Green Power Partners list, they're number 1. We're number 2. They're number 1. They buy no renewable energy, 0. They buy 100% RECs. So theirs is a paper transaction. And good, yes, it's a financial market. But they can't claim the renewable energy. They sell that right to somebody else. So who knows who, and maybe it's Firestone, somebody who produces a lot of carbon. They buy these RECs or sell these RECs to offset their carbon. So the University of Pennsylvania buys renewable energy certificates or credits so that it can be green. Now, whoever produced that energy can no longer say they're green. So our thinking has always been that RECs have to be your last resort if you are really about promoting renewable energy. Because if I produce them and then sell the credit, if I produce renewable energy and then sell the credits, I haven't encouraged the development of any new energy. I've kept a level playing field, which is fine. We buy the energy and we destroy the credits.
How can we say that we buy the energy? Go ahead.
Good question. Somebody in here should have asked that question. How do we buy the energy? We're not in Van Wert. We destroy the credits. We buy the energy through a very unique power purchase agreement, three-way agreement. We take title or possession of the energy at the wind farm. We have our own, what's called a revenue meter. It's an energy meter that is accurate down to the 1/1000th of a kilowatt hour. Very accurate. It's what's required by the transmission operator. So we buy the wind right there. We have a contract with AEP Energy to transport it for us. So we buy it, we turn around, we hand it off to AEP, who owns the transmission space between the wind farm and Columbus. So they transport it. We pay them for that transportation cost. And that's how we make sure that wind essentially is first through the meter. So AEP Energy sees, oh, Ohio State is getting 50 megawatts of wind today, or 35 megawatts of wind today at this moment. And Ohio State needs 100. So they backfill. We need 100, we're getting 30. They add 70 more and transport 100 to us and bill us. We buy the wind from Iberdrola separately. We pay them separately. So we pay the $46.50 per megawatt hour to Iberdrola. And then we pay AEP for their energy, plus a fee or adder or rider, whatever you want to call it, for their troubles of transporting the wind. We could have done the wind transport ourselves, but we're not in that business. We didn't want to get in that business. We didn't want to register as a transmission operator. We didn't want to register with PJM. We didn't want to register with the PUCO. We didn't want to clarify that we weren't selling. We're trying to be smart, but also focus on what we do, which is education and research. So we asked companies who would like to do this for us and at what price. AEP said, we'll do it. We thought the price was okay. Well, it's not great. So we only signed a 2-year agreement with that. So that expires next May 14th. Maybe we'll decide to do it ourselves. Maybe we'll find somebody else to do it. Iberdrola is actually thinking about becoming a utility itself, in which case it could transport the wind directly to us, and we would just have to negotiate what's the cost for the space. Because there is a congestion issue on the transmission lines between Van Wert and Columbus. So we pay congestion charges based on that. All in, we are going to save probably $1 million this year. Well, 12 months. December 2012 through the end of November 2013, with our wind contract plus the fee, even, we expect we'll pay about $1 million less for energy than had we just stayed with AEP Ohio. If AEP Ohio's rates continue to climb the way they're forecasting, this deal is going to look a whole lot better than $1 million very soon.
What's the expected return on investment for this?
Well, it's really not a typical investment because it's avoided cost. But yeah, there was certainly a cost to going and getting this. We're paying, I don't know, 3 or 4 million more than we probably, if we just went out on the market and sold the university power, just said, hey, we want somebody to give us 100 megawatts, lowest bid. Don't care where it comes from or what it looks like. We probably spend less than we're spending now. In the current market, probably 3 or 4 million less. What we got out of this, though, is a 20-year, I can budget for 20 years. You ask me, what will the price of a quarter of my load be in September 2018? I can tell you to the penny. That's huge.
It's
to be
gonna
able to
stay
budget.
for, you said 4650 per megawatt hour?
It's
for 20
$46.50
years?
per megawatt hour with a fixed escalator, 2% per year, which is way below inflation and is also below the average increase in energy prices.
While we're on an economic standpoint, isn't it kind of a terrible idea to have a 20-year contract for the energy, but a 2-year contract for the transmission? Because then after 2 years, everyone in Ohio knows that we're between a rock and a hard place to get our energy.
It's, you know, that's a perfect question. I don't think it's terrible. It's
Not awesome.
It causes a bit of nerves, but we certainly weren't willing to sign a 20-year deal on transport because we think AEP's costs, and they're brand new. Everyone is brand. No one's ever seen a deal like this, so no one really knew. Part of the deal is on the transmission congestion costs that are charged by the transmission operator. Those are passed through directly. So AEP charges a fee and any costs that come from the transmission operator. So for 2 years, we're going to look at those costs. And our calculation is those costs are going to be about 8 to 30 cents per megawatt hour. Our worst case scenario is, and we tried to imagine some issues, we came to about $1.80 per megawatt hour. Okay, AEP is charging us on average for this 2 years like $1.59 per megawatt hour, plus an administration fee. I mean, there's a whole lot of administration, a lot of paperwork every single month, and we give them it's $4 for that. All of that in, we're still on the million good side. What we think is in 2 years, what I'm hoping for, or maybe I won't be able to do this next year because somebody else will have this job, is that in next May I'm going to be able to go and say, okay, who wants to do this for us? By the way, we've just monitored this for 2 years. The congestion price is 38 cents on average. We'll entertain bids below 38 cents. And a rock and a hard place is typical. We are the second largest user of power in the state of Ohio. We're in the top 10 in the nation. We have been AEP's first or second largest customer since they began 150 years. We're huge. The ability to serve us is a privilege. We never let people forget. So it's a unique three-party arrangement. We get a lot more than the energy and the RECs, though. We get academics and research. Very special agreement. I just got back from Portland last week, where we're negotiating the details on this side of the contract. Physical, market, and ecological access to highly sensitive, highly trade secret information. We have their moment-by-moment data per turbine. If I want to know what the temperature of the oil in turbine number 67 is, I can tell you. If I want to know what they bid their energy into the market that day, I can tell you. Universities have been struggling to get this information for years. To look at a systems-wide approach, what does wind do to the energy market? What price signals encourage wind? What price signals discourage wind? How can you make intermittent power look like baseload power? Through systems aggregation. If I could look at all of the wind in the country at one time as a single operator, I wouldn't care that it wasn't blowing in Van Wert. Oh, because it's blowing in South Austin. So if there's enough wind You could replace wind and say solar. There's enough intermittent power now in the interconnected systems to always have production. 24/7, 365. So you could, with the proper modeling and the powerful operations computer system, you could actually now price renewable energy into the market as 100% reliable, just like coal and nuclear. But somebody has to come up with that massive, control system. That computer that can look at all of this. Right now, the system is balanced every 15 seconds. Power has to flow in all directions at the same time in balance. PJM, the transmission operator, balances every 15 seconds. So to integrate renewables, you got to beat 15 seconds.
If someone were to figure out how to build that.
Someone will. We are going to.
Oh,
Do you have to leave, go?
do we have, are we pretty close to that?
Yes. We are the approach that's being taken is called islanding, microgridding, which is being able to, rather than control the individual renewable generators, is control the load. If wind is not currently available in Van Wert, but is available from another location nearby, rather than say, okay, the whole market, that's typically the PJM market, now has a loss of wind, they just islanded it off. Because all of the Van Wert power only goes to 3 places. So they microgrid it. So our little microgrid then would have an increase in price for that period of time. All of the rest wouldn't. So it's just instantaneously changing the size of the grid, if you will, but only on a financial basis, really.
So what have we, what have we been able to get to if you said they were at 15 refreshes or whatever?
Well, in our modeling simulation, we can get to real time, actual microsecond.
Nice.
Just essentially, a blip behind the speed of electric. It's because the electric is now comes with its own signaling, component. So it would just travel with the signal. We'll see. Why do we do it? Economics. It was the right thing to do, great. Academics and research, great. But integration and sustainable means it's got to be economics. The trustees said they wanted to be green, said they wanted to take a big leap towards carbon neutrality. But, oh, by the way, don't bankrupt us. We went in expecting to pay a premium. Wind is a premium, solar is a premium. We did not expect to come out saving money. Could we have saved more by not buying wind? Sure. But the notion to be able to buy wind at $46.50, lock it in for 20 years, when the current price of power is $52. If we were just buying from AEP Ohio, we'd be paying $52 per megawatt hour instead of $46.50 for wind. So wind is actually, in this market, at this point in time, wind was cheaper just on the energy portion. Forget the transport distribution issues. Wind was cheaper. Just the perfect storm. Wind was overbuilt. The company had installed capacity that they wanted to get rid of. They loved the idea of Brutus. So it all helps. Why did it work? Because everyone was really willing to make it happen. There was we haven't done it that way before. About $1 million, yeah, I said that. Wind power. Good for Ohio State, good for Ohio. Anybody know what that is?
The oldest windmill ever.
Close.
Second oldest.
It's the first. Well, windmills for water extraction have ancient Egypt, but this is the first electric generating wind turbine, invented in
Wow.
Big.
Charles Brush, 1880 something. Euclid, Ohio, first generation in wind. So, I'm happy to say that we do more wind research here at this university than anywhere in the world. The reason we can get 300 megawatts out of Van Wert is because we developed the system. It said if you just make them a little bit higher, Ohio State was responsible for revolutionizing the wind resource map because everybody was looking at one level. And we said, no, if you go up to 300 feet instead of 250, everything changes. And that was from some of our aeronautics researchers here. So these wind turbines in Van Wert are huge. They are bigger than a 747 spinning. So, questions, thoughts? We have as I put in a plug, we have a dedicated students programs director. Anyone interested in energy or environmental related to energy, we want to be able to say they had a better experience at Ohio State than they could have gotten anywhere else. Career advice, connections to companies, internships, student functions on campus. A couple of you guys know from Paul, but our office is here. Just because I do operations, we have 3 points: research, academics, and operations. So if you have any interest in energy or you have a question, anytime, call. We're here.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mark.
Outstanding.
We have nobody outside?
Oh, they're
No.
gonna see it later.
Oh,
They're gonna see
it's not
recording.
live. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
No, it's not live. So, but I'm dying to know. You said you're not a fan of wind.
Economics. This farm is still the exception in my head, but I have not been able to make the economics generally work. I think wind will be the first to really break now that the production tax credit was renewed. I'm a purist. If you have to create the market, there's a problem. We're seeing that on solar now that China is dumping, PV panels below cost. We're seeing solar just expand rapidly. Companies in this country are now having troubles because of the China price. But on the market side, it's, the state commission turning down the Turning Point solar field in Ohio because they can't make the market price work. The renewable energy credit for solar is trading at $35 per megawatt. So if that were solar, if that were wind, that's $35 plus the price. So that would turn my wind price from $46.50 into $81 when I could buy General Energy on the market for $50. Solar is, I think, has some other issues, some land issues, some toxic issues, disposal issues. Wind, now that they're higher, the land issue has been pretty well addressed. The farmers in Van Wert can go up to 10 feet. I mean, they take their plows and they're right back up to the turbines. We're planning an event up there, a dedication up there, April 9th. We're going to probably fill 2 buses if he wants to come along, see a wind turbine up close and personal. So it's just been an economics issue for me. And I'm biased to nuclear. Nuclear, low cost, still the safest. I'm still a big believer in central distribution.
It's by far the safest. In fact, it's like
It's not
way
the
safer.
numbers
It's not
aren't
even
even comparable.
Yeah, and no one, as far as I know, no one even got hurt from the Japan one. Is that?
Well, no, I mean, some got hurt, and this is typical. First responders,
Right.
they're damaged, and there's 10 miles of hot soil now. So those people got hurt, if not physically. You know, their homes are gone. Even if they hadn't been washed away by the tidal surge, it's hot soil. The soil is hot because of the water they sprayed on top of the, so it wasn't hot from fallout. It was hot from water wash. You know, they're cooling, shooting jet or seawater, and the water's running down, leaching into the soil. Soil loves to absorb. You know, soil and water are the two best insulators for nuclear radiation. So, but yeah, it's not even comparable. I mean, even if you put the two worst accidents, you know, Fukushima and Chernobyl, you're in the hundreds of immediate deaths, and that's including mining. You know, you're in the tens of thousands in coal mining,
Per year.
and the emissions. You know, we can argue forever about the emissions. I'm a big believer in base load, though. I'm a math guy. Country needs 4 terawatts of energy in the next 10 years. No science that I can come up with can produce enough renewables to address that. Renewables are growing faster than anything else, and they still account for, if you include hydro, 2 to 3%. If you exclude hydro, less than 1.
Scale.
Wind turbine, I need 5 acres for one of those giant wind turbines. 1. So, I had 100 of them up in Van Wert. That's 5 acres if you could just, put them side by side by side by side. You need access roads to them all. Solar, I need 5 acres per megawatt. So a coal plant, a nuclear power plant, a gas-fired power plant, say 1,000 megawatts, average. Most nuclear plants are 1,200, 1,500. Most coal plants are 500 to 1,000. So just the math in my head still says we're not there science-wise. I don't have enough sun exposure property or wind exposed property to deal with the base load. Now solar and wind, I'm a big believer that solar and wind need to work together though, because they balance each other out really well. Wind typically blows at night and in the spring and fall. It doesn't like to blow during the day, and it doesn't typically blow the dead of winter or the dead of summer. 2 best times for solar: day, winter and summer. No. So if I'm going to go out, and the university has me looking right now at solar, what I'm looking for is something to match or to backfill some of my wind. I want the solar field that is going to be best positioned to balance, to fill on my wind, so that I will be able to flatten my renewable load. So when I expect the wind to be blowing, I don't expect the sun to be shining, and vice versa. That'll give us great negotiating power. Because if you're a flat load customer, you're a low cost customer.
So would you rather, you said you'd want the solar in a field, you wouldn't think of putting them on like buildings or anything like that here on campus?
Good question. Big difference. I am a believer in solar in a distributed level. The math does seem to work. Solar buildings, rooftops, small use solar, that math is much closer to working, at least. And in some cases, I think it is cost effective. Problem is there's no technology that can produce enough. I can't cover any building on this campus with solar and make a 20% impact on that building's load. Because I need 5 acres of solar exposure for a megawatt. Most buildings on this campus are at least 1/4 of a megawatt. So You know, I need an acre. Roofs don't have an acre. They have, even the big roofs. I got a couple acres over on the Woody Hayes Athletic Facility, but I've also got air conditioning units and drain and vent units, and you gotta have access to all that. And most roofs weren't built for the load. But we have a couple solar projects we're looking at on campus. Take a while. We're looking at carport coverage, covering some of the surface lots with essentially canopies. The big issue for us is snow load. What do you do with the snow? Because it hits these and it sloughs off pretty quickly. So they're designed for that. That's not the issue. The issue is then it sloughs off right into the parking space. So, well, somebody here, some of our students will figure that out. We got a capstone team looking at how to deal with the snow and water runoff if we were to install that.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. This is fantastic.
Did you copy that already?
Yes.
Have they come up with any good solutions yet?
There's a couple, I don't know.